Hello, welcome back to the Scale Modeling Twins. Going to have a look at another post-build review of a kit I've done, well, not so recently, but not so long ago. This is the MiniArt 35th scale Flettner 282 Kolibri. Very, what's a challenging and fragile kit. So there's a bit of a problem with with the way it's turned out, and I'll show that shortly. But we'll go to the desk and have a look at the instructions first, because they are rather complicated. All right, so this is front page. So it's a Flettner 282 V-16 Kolibri, which is, from what I understand, it's German, well, certainly East European for Hummingbird. It's the world's first production helicopter. Not that many were made, but from what I understand and the videos I've seen online, it's actually very easy to fly. Totally fragile, small, all that stuff. Couldn't carry much more than itself, but that's fine. You sort of understand that. Great for shipborne operations. It can it had two contra-rotating propellers. It didn't, because these intermeshing blades were set on different angles and they turned in opposite directions, that it would cancel itself out and there'd be no sort of precession with all helicopters these days pretty much have a tail rotor to stop the fuselage or the empennage turning around with the rotor blades. This one cancelled itself out because it was driven by one engine through a gearbox that perfectly intermeshes these rotors. One is set like that, one set like that, and as they turn, they go. I can't show you because I've actually lost one of the blades of the kit. These are all the parts, and you use all the parts. There's none sort of like grayed out, blued out, whatever you want to call it. There's a bit of PE, and then there's a small decal set. Right. So it starts off by building the main, I guess you'd call it fuselage, but it's all just like tubular aluminium construction with fabric. Yeah, fabric, bloody fuselage walls, whatever you call it, structure. Big tail, so a big rudder, so you can get some positive sort of movement there. And then it goes into constructing the engine. Now in MiniArt true style, there's lots of parts that go into this. So it starts off with, you've got the main body, the cylinders, the rocker cover pusher rods, and each of these, you've got the rocker covers themselves. There's 7 of these. There's, because there's 7 cylinders, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. You've got 2 of those per cylinder, so 14 of them. Then you've got 7 of these. These are the exhaust ducts go into the gearbox there. This is a accessory drive that's coming off the forward end of the engine, the center. So there's 35 parts that make up the engine there. Once you've got the 35 parts there, you throw these together. That's the gearbox that, with the drive going up with the universal joint up to the rotors, and the gearbox that sits on top of the engine there. You've got, this will be a fuel pump, and you'll have an oil pump around the back of the engine there. All these other little bits of fuel lines. The gearbox itself goes together. There's 31 parts that make up things that aren't the engine itself. So 35 for the engine, 31 for bits, the accessories and everything else, including these ones. So this is a gearbox on top of the drive comes up into here, and it splits it. It turns one way, but it splits it into 2 different directions and 2 different angles through that bit. Once you've got that together, it goes on to the main bit of the fuselage there. You've got the control cables that go from the pilot's condition levers to the flight controls at the empennage. So control rods there and all on top of there. You've got a cooling fan to provide positive airflow across the air-cooled engine when it's not flying or having forward momentum. Then you start making up what would be where the pilot sits. So this is just a cage, and there's lots of little bits in here. Again, these are the condition levers going up to the flight controls. The bottom of the engine housing and the sides, they get built up there with the photo etch on those. The seat goes in, then you've got the rotors. So there's one piece for each blade, but then you've got the center bit and the, I don't know, it's one of the I think it's a counterweight for a collective. So centrifugal force then would sort of go to center that. So the pilot would have feedback when he moves a lever. Undercarriage goes on, the rotors go on, photo etch seatbelt and a couple of decals would go on the instrument panel there, and then that's it. However, it's a very complicated thing. So you've got a couple of schemes. One is a Russian one. This is post-war Flight Research Institute in Zhukovsky, Moscow region, USSR, 1948. And I believe that's the other version as well, because it's got a blacked out swastika and serial number, code, and all that sort of stuff. So this is the other scheme, and I think it's the same airframe. And this is before the end of the war, 1944-45. So that's the instructions, and this is the kit. Now, a couple of things. First of all, I've got a major problem with this is I built it, I took it to the model club, and it's a really windy day, and when I got home, one of the rotor blades is missing. So I went back there the next day and had a look around the car park and everything else, upstairs, downstairs. I can't find the other rotor blade, but believe me that if that sits there and they sit on different angles, you can see the angle of the pickoffs for the gearbox there. That you have these two rotors that sit on different angles, and if that one goes on that angle, the other one would be across there. So as they turn, they do intermesh, and it's just intriguing to watch, but I cannot show you because I've lost one. But it's very, very fragile, and the fact is I can't believe I haven't broken this one yet. It's very, very flexible and quite long and everything else. So the main aircraft itself, well, let's call it a helicopter. Engine sits in there. You've got the accessory drives, exhaust, and everything else behind that firewall. I've actually removed this just to show you, but that sits on there and covers up the engine. You don't see any of the engine at all. It's got cowlings, sides, bottom, all that stuff. So the only cooling is behind, it's that gap there, but between the pilot seat and the covering of the engine there. All the accessory drivers open to the elements. And you've got the fuel tank at the back here, like you've got a cap. So that bit there is a fuel tank on this version. So if I take that off again, and you can see in there as the engine, the gearbox in front of it, and then the pickoff going up on an angle into the front of the gearbox on top there. And then the condition levers up to it, and they're doing the angle of the blades and everything else. This one has an Edward photo etch kit that I picked up at Telford. So it's got the seat belts, it's got these instrument panels on each side. That'd be just switches and a couple of little instruments here. I'm not even sure what they are, but basically set and forget out of the well, the pilot can reach them, but his main focus is the instrument panel at the front there. The big six that you'd have on all aircraft, so an artificial horizon, VSI, HI, all that stuff. Now, the thing is, this kit is really, really hard to balance, so it doesn't become a tail setter. So you've got, as you can see here, if that's the pivot point, got a whole lot of plastic at the back there with the vertical stab and the rudder. Horizontal stabs don't move and they're not that large, but all the weight of the plastic at the back there more than exceeds the weight of the engine and the subframe at the front of the vehicle. As a result of which, what I did before I put these together is actually shave as much as I could from the inside of these away, knowing that it was going to be a tail setter. And then built up the engine, go back to the instructions again. So that core in the engine I filled up with liquid gravity, so little tiny pellets of lead, if you like. I filled up the gearbox with liquid gravity. I filled up the accessory drive, the top gearbox with liquid gravity. The back of the so the instrument panel behind the coaming of the instrument panel, I filled that up with little bits of lead, and the seat. Where are we? Where's the seat going? Oh, back here. So the area below the seat cushion and the backrest, they're all filled up with lead as well. And I put all that in, and it was still a tail setter. So what I had to do is get a couple of sinkers, and I probably can't show you here, but they're seriously, they're quite large. They're probably about 5 mil, 7 mil diameter, and I had to have 3 of those sitting in the bottom cowl. I wonder if they're still in place. Yeah, you can see them. So I've got little ball sinkers there, forward of the engine, forward of the undercarriage, and everything else, and I had 3 of those in place to stop the tail sitting on the ground. Now, one of them fell out when I took off the side cowl. I haven't bothered re-gluing it. So as a result, it's pretty much on the cusp of whether it's going to be a tail setter or not. With 3 in there, it kept the nose on the ground. But yeah, you need serious weight in the front of this to keep it on the ground. So even with that panel in place, even with the rotors in place, it will always want to sit in its tail. As I say, I've accidentally lost one of the rotors. So that, as a result of that, I can't really display this anywhere because it's missing half the fun. But because these are so light and fragile that I hadn't weathered it, because these would be maintained in a pristine condition by the crew. There's nothing to them, as you see. The pilot sits in there. In later versions, they moved this fuel tank and they had a guy, his head was sitting up there and his legs were back here. So he could be used as an observation guy with the pilots that are flying wherever he wants around a ship over in the Atlantic and everything else. And in later versions, so this one here, I believe, had the guy sitting at the back. And the Americans, after the war, took these back to Edwards Air Force Base and tested them because they're very interested in them. And they had thrown on extra fuel tanks there to give it more range, because they could have a guy sitting back there or not. And they've also put a shroud around the guy's legs to keep him a bit warm. But that's the shipborne one, and as you can see, it's by that bit of art there, the box art, you could see the intermeshing blades and how they'd operate. And it's actually, as I say, quite fascinating to watch. They've also thrown on here some, the horizontal stabs have an upwards kick to try to improve the directional stability. That's all part of the testing, what they did at Edward Air Force Base. So that's it. So it's all designed by Anton Flettner, who's it's probably one of the best aviation designers to come out of Germany in the last, say, century or so. He was born late 1800s. But before this, he invented what's known as a rotor ship. So instead of having, think of it as a standard ship, but instead of having sails or whatever, it had like what looked like big funnels, like pipes, vertical pipes. So instead of sails, I actually don't know that much about him. Post-war, he was snabbed and went to America instead of going to USSR, and he was employed by Cayman, the helicopter company, So he then designed the HH-43 Husky, the Cayman Husky, which has the same intermeshing rotating blade setup. It's a larger thing, so it's got an enclosed cockpit and everything else. And it flew, the Husky in Vietnam flew more missions than all the other helicopter types together. And if you consider that they had, of course, the Iroquois and Chinook and a couple of other things going on around there, Cobra, more Cayman Huskies flew more missions than all of those together. They flew 888 combat missions, and it all came from this and what was being developed here. So he was really onto something, and I think he should be, honoured for his contribution to helicopters. As I say, this is the first production helicopter anywhere in the world. Sikorsky went for a different approach with a single blade and the tail rotor to stop it processing one way or the other. This contra-rotating thing, it is a problem because you can't, if you've got two of these, you can't have anyone come in from the side because these blades, when they're spinning, are almost at ground level, so they will chop you up. The only way to approach these helicopters was from the front because they would lift up the blades as they came forward over the pilot. But there's a lot of deaths and horrific injuries from these on the ground. Certainly for the Huskies in Vietnam and everything else. There's only one Husky flying anymore. The reason I wanted to build this one is because it was one of the first Musaru Cups, which was originally a challenge between the Australian Scale Model Podcast on the Bench and the Canadian one, Scale Model Podcast. Stuart over in Canada. And it grew from there. So Julian put one of these together, and it fought him to the end. So I wanted to see, a couple of years after that, I wanted to see how difficult it was as a kit. So my view is, it's bloody difficult. There are lots of small parts. And as you can see from the frame and the delicacy of it there, my view is if you didn't have the invention of extra thin cement, you could not build one of these with the old tube glue from, say, the 70s, 80s. You just couldn't do it. These, when you marry one part up to another, it's not really a positive fit. The instructions are very, very good. They show you where every part touches and where it goes, but there's no real sort of like, oh yeah, I feel it. Yep, that's positive engagement. And then you touch it together. It did take a while. I think because there is no cockpit per se, and you're sitting out in the open, the addition of the photo etch was probably worthwhile. You can see it there. Let's see if I can focus that. Probably not. Try that again. There we go. So yeah, it looks nice. And as I say, I kept it clean because it would have been absolutely clean. And you've got the control stick, the condition levers on the side, and these tiny, tiny pieces that go together. Yeah, but it's an interesting design. And very small for 35th scale. It's tiny, fragile, everything else. And I reckon I wouldn't. Yeah, I reckon if you want to build something different, go for this. It's a challenge, but I reckon you're going to really enjoy it because I really did. It's not unbuildable. It's almost like a test of character for a scale modeler. If you can do this, you can build anything. I wish I had the second rotor blade. I've been thinking about getting onto MiniArt and saying, "Oh, I've lost one. Can you send me a new one?" But the fact is, I lost it. It wasn't mismolded or anything else at all. But it's pretty cool. It won't last forever. It'll break one day, and it'll just go in the bin because if it breaks, it's going to be too hard to fix because it is so fragile. It literally, it's small. That's it. Compared to, I don't know, 35th scale. Let's compare it to, what do we got here? Oh, got a really small tank. This is Berg Panzer T60. Oh, yeah, it's a very small thing. But there we go. Thought I'd show you that. I actually meant to post this a few months ago, but then lost the half the rotors. and thought, I can't post this. People are just going to go, where's the other half? Well, there we go. Hope you enjoyed this. Yeah, I plan to do more of these videos. I should just pull my finger out and get onto it. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Uru.